Hi, I'm Jim Leach, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of Blue Steel Police Training, brought to you by Tennessee Underground on your YouTube TV channel. Let's talk for just a minute today about false confessions. I had an article drew this to my mind here that recently came out of Memphis, and the title of the article said case was thrown out because of a false confession. If you read the article, they never proved the confession was false. There were a lot of other problems with the case, and they decided to non-prosecute, drop prosecution. But don't we hear that a lot? We hear it from a lot of things in the media. To listen to them, you would think that we, when I say we, I mean the police. You can look behind me on the wall and see that my life has been about police work. And if you listen to a lot of people in the media, you would think that we take false confessions on a regular basis. Now, it happens. We all know it happens, but it is the exception rather than the rule. No good officer wants to take a false confession. First and foremost, you may send the wrong person to prison. You got to live with that the rest of your life, folks. You don't want to do that. Second, you look awfully stupid, especially when you get in court and everybody finds out it was false because some pops up and shows that you didn't check out, you didn't do your work right, didn't follow through correctly. And lastly, it can ruin your credibility, throw away, damage your credibility. And I'm going to tell you, your credibility is the strongest thing you've got going in law enforcement. That's what you carry home with you every night, and you get up with it every morning. If you lose your credibility, you've damaged yourself irreparably. What we're going to try to do today is look at some things. Why do people give false confessions? I used to think, really, that nobody would confess if they didn't do it. There are reasons why they do. What are things that we might see in here that should make us suspicious, make us ask a few more questions, get a few more details, see what's going on? And if they are giving us a false confession or a statement or admission of guilt, how do we catch them? Let's look at a few things, okay? Why do people give false confessions? There are several reasons. One reason may be covering for someone else. I had a mother one time in a drug case I was working. We ran a search warrant on a house, found some dope. The son lived there with her, and the mother was going to take the rap. She gave us a full confession. She owned the dope, and we knew it was a lie, and we proved it was a lie. Went back on the son, got a confession from him. Everything turned out right. But sometimes they may be covering for someone else for various reasons. Sometimes they may want to draw attention away from a more serious crime by confessing to a lesser crime. Let's say someone died in a home fire, and you got a suspect because you got his fingerprints off of a window where they gained access to the house. The guy says, look, I burglarized that house, stole some jewelry, got gone. There wasn't anybody there when I left. I don't know anything about the guy burning up in that house and dying. He's confessing to a lesser crime to try to deter you from investigating on the bigger crime. He's hoping you'll take that and say, well, if he'll tell me the truth about that, he'll probably tell me the truth about everything. He probably didn't do it, and he's lying the whole time. Many times, and we're seeing this more and more now, I think, with the nature of our society, they're afraid of someone else to tell the truth. In other words, there's three people involved in this crime. You get a hold of one, and he takes the rap because he is in fear of his life or his family's life if he doesn't. Okay? You can make a case, but you don't really get the bad guys, and you want to get the bad guys. Keep ducking, keep digging. Sometimes people will make false confessions for fame and notoriety. There was the most famous case I know of was Henry Lee Lucas and Otis Toole. If you're not familiar with it, it was a long time ago. Look them up. Two serial killers. They confessed to like 120 different killings. That's a lot of murder, folks. Let me tell you. And it turned out that they didn't commit very many. They didn't commit that many at all. We don't really know how many they committed and how many they didn't. But they didn't commit that many. They enjoyed the fame. They enjoyed the notoriety. You can see videos of them talking to one another on the phone, bragging about how they killed people and all this. They were that screwed up. But people sometimes do it to get a little fame, a little notoriety, build their rep. Okay. Sometimes it's out of confusion. I got a confession from a serial killer one time, and he had killed at least 5 people. And part of what he told me wasn't right. I got back home with it, talked to my medical examiner, my crime scene expert, and they said this and this and this couldn't happen. Went back to the guy, talked to him. I said, I want you to look at this again, make sure it's right. He looked and said, nope, nope, this and this and this. And he picked up the same three things, thank goodness. These things aren't right. I said, well, why did you tell me that? He said, I got that confused with this murder and this murder over here. Sometimes it's legitimate confusion. Sometimes they will succumb to an intense interrogation. And that's bordering on coercion. You got to be very careful about that. If you're a really good interrogator, that's a strong weapon. That's a very powerful weapon. You need to understand that. You know, you can get confession. You can get a lot of good information by being a skilled interrogator. But understand, it's a weapon, and you got to make sure you use it correctly, just like a gun or anything else. Okay? People can get confused. Sometimes, and I think I've seen this a couple of times lately in the news, and we talk about it on a radio show. You will have an inmate in prison confess to cut another inmate loose. I think we saw this recently. There was a case, a murder case, where a guy who was an undocumented alien. That's the reason he got so much press. He was an undocumented alien. It happened a couple of years ago, I think. Killed a girl, convicted of killing, got in jail, and this guy in jail says, no, he didn't do that. Another guy told me that he did that. Okay? Now, why would they do that? I think this guy just wanted his 15 minutes of fame, 15 seconds of fame probably. But sometimes they'll do it to make themselves, like if he knows he's not going to come out of jail, he's never going to come out of jail, it makes him look like a stand-up guy to be able to cut somebody else loose and let them get out of jail. Maybe so. Maybe the guy that he's getting out of jail is going to pay him some money. I don't know. But you got to watch out for that. You got to watch out for stuff. And speaking of paying money, sometimes people give false confessions because they are offered some kind of favor. In other words, if you'll take the rap for all of us on this drug case, you'll only do a couple of years. When you get out, man, you'll have your rep made. You can walk down the street and hold your head up. We'll take care of your family while you're gone. Don't worry about your little girl. We'll give you $25,000 when you get out. Bang. Confession. What are some things that should throw your antennas up to think, well, maybe this might be wrong. This might be a false confession. Okay, they get the facts wrong. All right. Now, you can get confused like we've talked about. What are they getting the facts wrong about? One of the guys I questioned one time when I asked him where a fella got shot, and I meant geographically, but he thought I meant physically. He said in the back of the head. I wasn't that familiar with the case. I'd just gone with a buddy to be in there with him during the interview. When he got through, he asked me if I had any questions. I asked that question. After we left, I said, he said, there's one thing, my partner said, there's one thing I didn't understand. He said that guy was shot in the back of the head. I said, that's not where he was shot? I hadn't even read the case. He said, no, he was shot 5 times directly in the face at point blank range. Now, you shouldn't forget that. That's something to stick in your mind. I don't care how cold-blooded you are. You shouldn't get that fact wrong. Wearing a heavy coat, okay, and it's 95 degrees outside, telling you it was cold, those facts. You shouldn't get those wrong. You hear them make mistakes like that, look at that real hard. They shouldn't get those things wrong. Anytime that a person's memory is too good or too bad, it's suspect, okay? If I ask you, if I'm talking to you at 11:30 this morning, I say, what'd you have for breakfast? And you can't remember? That's too bad. You should remember that, right? But if, a lot of people, when they're telling a lie, they think the more detail they can give you, the more likely you are to believe it. So if I ask you, what did you have for breakfast on October 3rd of last year, and you tell me, without even batting an eye, you tell me what you had, that's too good a memory, right? You send me too much information. Let your antennas go up. Start asking some more questions, okay? Sometimes, if what they tell you just does not make sense, use your common sense, just with everything. Common sense is valuable. When you're looking at somebody's confession, the same way you would develop a suspect. Remember the word mom, like your mother, M-O-M. Means, opportunity, and motive. If they're giving you a confession, see if they had the means to do it. If it was a killing by a firearm, did they have a gun? Did they have the opportunity to do it? If it happened in Kankakee, were they in Grand Junction, Tennessee at the time it happened? They didn't have the opportunity, if that's right, okay? And the motive. Now, in most cases, I know in Tennessee, I don't think in any cases, you've got to show a motive as an element of a crime. I don't know about other states for sure. But I kind of want to know a motive. I feel much better if I got a motive I can understand. Some things it's given, robbery, you pretty well, your motive's for money. But a lot of cases, I want to hear the motive. Make sure it makes common sense. They have the means, opportunity, and motive to commit the crime. And then, of course, should really go without saying, look for your normal indicators of deceit. Signs of nervousness, signs of stress, unable to look at you, frequent blinking of the eyes, the regular signs of stress. If you think you got somebody lying to you, how you catch it? Number one thing, make them go into detail. Try to get them to tell you as much detail as they can. Like my old sheriff friend Delphus Hicks used to say, he said, if you're telling the truth, you can tell it the same way every time. If you're making it up, you got a little problem. And he's exactly right. Make them give you as much detail as possible, and then make them go back over it. Not just as soon as you finish, say, tell me that again. They tell you to one time, start talking about the Celtics basketball or Cardinal baseball or whatever you want to talk about. Get their mind on something else, then come back and say, let's make sure I got this right, okay? See if they can tell it to you again the same way, okay? And there's no limit to how many times you can do that if you want to, okay? If they're telling the truth, they should be able to tell it again the same way every time, at least very, very close to the same way, okay? Also, you can make stuff up and tell it to them as though it's a fact and see if they agree with you. Say, well, I tell you what, I don't know if you remember how cold it was that day, but I like to froze to death all day. They said, yeah, I know it. I had to wear 2 heavy coats. Once again, it's 95 degrees out. They're just saying, they're agreeing with whatever you want to say. Play with them. If they're lying to you, play with them. Give them 2 or 3 facts and see if they agree with all of it, and then say, well, let me tell you what you're doing, pal. Call her handler. Once again, you may have to do this after the statement, but before you go to court, verify what they say. Get as much detail as you can and verify it. So a case one time where a kid pled guilty to a murder. He didn't plead. I think he did plead guilty. He gave a confession anyway. I was watching a video on this, and they were really intense on it. And the kid wasn't real smart, and that's one thing you got to take into consideration: the mental capacity of who you're talking to. This kid wasn't, he didn't have a great mental capacity. And they got on him very hard, and he was agreeing to everything they said to him. And they were feeding him too much information. You got to watch that. Come to find out, he was in South America at a dentist office when the crime occurred. Okay? Would that make you look a little bad? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And they went to court with it. And the guy that caught it was a lieutenant that was involved in the question. He didn't feel right about it. Kept checking, found an airline ticket, ran it down, found out it was true. Verify what they say before you go to court. Get as much detail as you can. Verify what they say. Last thing, and very, very important, when you're investigating a crime, try and keep some things to yourself. Okay? Things that nobody knows except the people working on the case and the people that committed the crime, and maybe the victim. The victim is not a murder victim case. When they tell you those things, you know you got the right person. Okay? Very big thing. If they don't know the answer to it, once again, that may not mean that they're innocent, but it causes you to look a little further. Folks, I hope this has been helpful to you. To go more in depth on some of these things, you might look. We've got on our Blue Steel police training program here. We've got I think it's 8 videos that myself and Steve Bowers did on interview and interrogation. Cover all different aspects of it. They're very short, like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes apiece, and they cover everything from basic communications down to suspect confessions and interviews and victims and witnesses. All of that. Get it on the YouTube TV channel, Tennessee Underground. And also, there's a little book I wrote that says, You Can Tell Me. I wrote an interview and interrogation. Just happen to have a copy right here on my desk. You can get it on Amazon. It's so cheap, it's almost a steal. Get it in Kindle or paperback version. Once again, my name is Jim Leach, and we appreciate your time, appreciate you spending it with us. Until next time, please be safe, folks. Thank you.